You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's January the 11th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. I'm live here at the Legacy420.com news desk and coming to you from paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. As you notice, I'm alone today. Glenn and Cindy are not available, so I'm just going to wing it and go by myself and see how everything turns out. It's been a while since gone alone, actually, to tell you the truth. Since we've been doing Reefer Reporters and Pace News, I think it's only been like once I've had to go alone. Mind you, before that, I did it for a couple of years at Rock 107 out of Belleville with the Reefer Reporters segment during the Flower Hour on the weekends. So that was quite a while ago. So a little bit out of practice. But other than that, let's get at it. I got some stories here, and we'll go through them. First up, Thailand. Thailand has moves to ban recreational use of cannabis in a setback for the nascent industry. And this comes to us from the Straits Times. Thailand is proposing a ban on recreational use of cannabis and hefty penalties on offenders under a new bill that seeks to end a legal vacuum after the country became the first in Asia to decriminalize the plant. The smoking of cannabis and its use by any other forms for recreational will be banned under the draft bill that was published by the Ministry of Health on January the 9th. I don't know if you've been watching on the news, but it's just been going wild over there since they basically just decriminalized it without anything to follow along with, and things have changed. The new government is in place. The use of cannabis plant or its products will be limited to medical and health purposes. The draft legislation is the latest attempt by the authorities to regulate the industry after an earlier bill failed to win parliament backing. It also meets the Prime Minister's election pledge to restrict the use of cannabis to medical purposes due to concerns over addiction. Yes, concerns to addiction. Under the proposed bill, anyone who smokes cannabis for recreation will face a fine of up to 60,000 baht, which is about $2,284 in the U.S. Those selling cannabis or its extracts for recreational purposes face up to 1 year in jail and a fine of 100,000 bahts. In fines, or you get both. So I'm going to say that's probably about $5,000, a little bit less than $5,000 US as far as that fine. Thailand's cannabis industry has been operating in a gray area as the plant was decriminalized in 2022 before lawmakers could agree on how to regulate it. The new industry is seeking to end the regulatory vacuum that has led to the mushrooming of thousands of dispensaries all over the country. They sell everything from cannabis buds to oil extracts containing less than 0.2% THC. Under the proposed rules, advertising or marketing campaigns for cannabis or extracts or any devices used in smoking will be prohibited. Driving while high on cannabis is also punishable with a fine of up to 20,000 baht or 1 year in jail. The government will also tighten licensing rules for cannabis planting, sales, exports, and imports. Once the new rules take effect, growers will need to apply for a license within 60 days, while the existing dispensaries can continue to operate before renewing their permits. The government has moved to reclassify the plant as a narcotic again, which would have entailed longer jail terms and fines. The public industry stakeholders have until January. The public and industry stakeholders have until January the 23rd, so that's a little bit less than 2 weeks, to submit feedback on the bill. And the health minister may still make changes to the bill before submitting it to the cabinet, which will send it to the parliament for approval. So there you go. Big changes in Thailand, because everybody was really excited what was going on over there. And, when I've been going through these stories, it's made me wonder, is this even going to survive? And as we're seeing, it's being reported that the new government is making changes, and things aren't going to be the same as they were there for a little while. All right, on to my next story. This one comes to me from the International Cannabis Business Conference. The headline there says that legalization is not associated with spikes in cannabis-related psychosis. That was that big fear. If cannabis is legal, everybody's going to end up with psychosis because of cannabis. So here we go. One of the most common mainstream media hit jobs in modern times involved opponents implying that cannabis reform alone has led to a spike in incidents of cannabis-related psychosis among consumers and patients. Cannabis legalization, by every reasonable measure, has been an overwhelming success in jurisdictions that have been allowing it, including in Canada, where cannabis was first legalized for adult use in 2018. Researchers in Canada examined data involving instances of cannabis-related psychosis and determined that legalization is not associated with spikes in such incidents. And here's some more information. They say that part of this is according to data published in the International Journal of Drug Policy. And they said a team of Canadian researchers examined regional changes in health services use and incidences of psychotic disorders during the months immediately following legalization. They reported, "We did not find evidence of increases in health service use or incident cases of psychotic disorders over the short term, which was 17 months period following cannabis legalization." They cautioned, however, that a longer post-legalization observation period is needed to fully understand. So we'll see what happens if they do this again in another year and a half, or who knows, 5 years from now. The finding is consistent with the conclusions of a 2022 study published in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry. Its authors similarly determined that the implementation of Canada's cannabis legalization framework was not associated with evidence of significant changes in cannabis-induced psychosis or schizophrenia. In the United States, state-level cannabis legalization laws have not been associated with statistically significant increases in psychosis-related health outcomes. Specifically, in 2022, papers published in the Journal of American Medical Association, Network Open, found no association between the adoption of cannabis legalization and overall rates of psychosis-related diagnosis or prescribed antipsychotics. Although the use of cannabis and other controlled substances tend to be more common among those with psychotic illnesses, studies indicate that lifetime instances of cannabis-induced psychosis are relatively rare among those who do not have a prior psychotic diagnosis. According to one recent published study, fewer than 0.5% of cannabis consumers have ever reported experiencing psychotic symptoms requiring medical intervention, a percentage that is lower than the rate associated with alcohol. And for the longest time, we would talk about that when we were doing public shows at the trade shows and stuff in Toronto, and tell people that, hey, they talk about the fact that they're worried about psychosis and schizophrenia and all this is going to happen with cannabis legalization. And we would say, well, the percentage hasn't increased. They're still saying there's so many people, percentage of the world that has this. Nothing's changed. And that story right there, that just confirmed everything that we've been saying to people for years. So that's always good to see. All righty. On to the next story. And headline there says, Florida bill would cap adult use cannabis at 10% THC. And this comes to us from an entrepreneur. Capping cannabis at 10%? Like, okay, all right. Florida State Representative Ralph Masulo has introduced a bill proposing limitations on the potency of cannabis in the event that adult use cannabis is legalized in the state later this year. The proposed legislation seeks to set a maximum THC content of 10% for cannabis products intended for smoking and 60% for concentrates. Additionally, cannabis edibles would be subject to a cap of 200 milligrams of THC per package and 10 milligrams per serving. Wow. I can like that last part, the 200 milligrams of THC per package and 10 milligrams per serving. That's much better than we got here in Canada. I can tell you that, because ours is only 10 milligrams per package unless you're buying capsules. Capsules, you can get a higher percentage. You can get 10% per capsule. If you get 15 capsules or 100 capsules in your package, then obviously that 10% package rule here in Canada is sort of thrown out there. So, say here the text of the bill reads, marijuana for personal use may not have a THC potency by weight or volume of greater than 10% for cannabis in a form for smoking, or greater than 60% in the final product for all other forms of cannabis, excluding edibles. Edibles for personal use may not contain more than 200 milligrams of THC, and a single serving portion of an edible may not exceed 10 milligrams of THC. So there you go. Considering that most cannabis for sale in other adult use markets is over 15% THC, and that the rule would apply only to adult use cannabis, not the current medical cannabis market in Florida, the bill would inherently give medical cannabis brands a significant advantage. However, the possibility of Florida voters encountering an adult use legalization measure on the November ballot is still in question. All right, so 10%. Like, come on. Most people are just going to turn around and say, find some medical needs so they can get higher percentages. And that means that growers are going to have to search out strains that have very little THC in it. Not good, not good. I hate to, you can spend 6 months growing a plant and then find out that its THC is too high. 1% over. And then you lose it all. A campaign named Smart and Safe Florida has garnered enough signatures to potentially qualify for the 2024 ballot. But the Florida Supreme Court is currently deliberating on a constitutional challenge against the measure initiated by the Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody. Most of the campaign's funding, approximately $39.5 million, reported comes from Trulieve, a multi-state publicly traded cannabis brand. Moody has accused them of attempting to monopolize the legal cannabis market in Florida through this initiative. Well, if you don't have medical, like these guys are getting the recreational going, that's not monopolizing, that's getting it for the people. Something that the Attorney General is not doing. Despite its introduction, the bill's chances of success remain uncertain. Previous attempts to limit cannabis flower potency to 10% has not passed. For the measure to pass, it would require approval from 60% of the voters. Some people would be quite happy, get your foot in the door, right? It gets cannabis legalized there in the state. 10% would be better than no percent, better than jail. But still, it won't affect the patients, as it says that the medical end won't be affected by it whatsoever. But the fact that the recreational, that won't change people's habits of where they're going now. Not like it could if everything was available as it should be, percentage wise, naturally. And, those strains with the higher THC, people enjoy them, not just because of the THC, but other reasons. And if they're not going to be able to find those things in the stores, they'll go elsewhere. That's what's going to happen. So, all right, on to the next story before I take my break. And the headline here comes from a story from StratCan, say that Canadians bought more than $16 billion worth of cannabis in the first 5 years of legalization. $16 billion. And that probably doesn't even include the billions that they've just thrown away in the story that we did there on Monday, Rev Kelly and I. Billions thrown away and destroyed in 5 years. And now, and here we got some stuff that shows how much we've bought. The other stuff, it was thrown away. If it wasn't bad, why couldn't it have been available to patients? Lots of patients out there that can't afford their medicine. Why not make it available to them at a reduced cost? Better than destroying it. All right. Canadian cannabis stores sold more than $16 billion worth of cannabis products from October 2018 to October 2023, according to the news figures from Stats Canada. Despite monthly fluctuations, cannabis sales continue to climb in Canada year over year, with more than 448 million sold by the nearly 3,700 cannabis retailers nationwide as of October 2023. This is an increase from about 392 million in October 2022, although down from an August 2023 high of almost 467 million. You can see the line there in the graph. The number of retail stores across Canada also continues to grow, although the pace has slowed considerably compared to the first 4 years. As of January 2024, so this month, there were 3,694 stores in Canada, excluding provincial online stores. You see, BC, they got 510 public and private stores either open or coming soon. Alberta, 749. Saskatchewan, 182 stores. Manitoba, 207. 115, which are in Winnipeg. So, excuse me there, but most of the stores are in Winnipeg, and the rest of the province, gee, that's not spread out very well. Ontario, 1,787 stores. That's pretty close to half of the stores in all of the country. Quebec has got only 98 stores. New Brunswick, they got 31 public stores plus 6 private stores and 6 farm gate stores for a total of 43. Nova Scotia's got 49. PEI only has 4. But from earlier reports, PEI, one of their stores there, has got some of the largest sale numbers. Newfoundland and Labrador's got 52 stores. Northwest Territories has got 6 brick and mortar stores. And Nunavut's got 1. The Yukon's got 6. So there we go. There's all the stores across the country by province. Things have changed. And the worst thing is that medical cannabis has been legal in this country for 23 years. And I'm only aware of 1 store in the whole country that is medically related. Like, come on, we need to make some changes here. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that, that's for sure. All right, people, time for me to take my break. I'll be right back after my puff on my vaporizer. Now that you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News here at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And I'm back from my medication session, and we're ready to bring you some more news here on psychedelics and cannabis educational news found at paceradio.net and cbgtv.com. All right, I got three more stories, so this is just going to fly right along. And first up comes from the International Cannabis Business Conference. Headline there says, cannabis clubs are here to stay in Barcelona, Spain. All right, that sounds interesting. Wow, big city. Barcelona Mayor John Colboni and the Barcelona City Council are ramping up efforts to close down the city's famed cannabis clubs, with the City Council recently launching a new inspection campaign. The effort is aimed at putting an end to the clubs, with the city leadership stating that it's a model that we do not want in our city. Did I misread the line in that headline? Are here to stay. All right. Cannabis clubs in Barcelona have long benefited from a favorable tolerance of cannabis clubs, which operate in a legal gray area of sorts. Commercial adult use cannabis is still prohibited in Spain. However, it is unconstitutional for Spain's government to prohibit private cannabis use. Law enforcement in Barcelona region of Spain estimates that the area is home to roughly 450 clubs, all of which are essentially unregulated. The clubs are very popular, and even if one is closed down, another one pops up to take its place in short order. An effort to close down all of them is an untenable goal by every measure. Okay, 450 clubs. People are going to those clubs, which tells me people are supporting these clubs, especially by attending them and by spending their money there. Cannabis prohibition is a failed public policy, here, with no hard evidence existing to back up the claim that it works. Prohibition does not lower rates, Humans have made use of the cannabis plant for thousands of years, and that will never cease to be the case. Barcelona is no exception. Cannabis is so ingrained in the culture of the Barcelona region that it is home to the largest cannabis super conference on the planet, a collaborative effort between the world's largest cannabis gathering, Spannabis, and the world's leading business-to-business series, the International Cannabis Business Conference. Wow. Barcelona is one of the top international cannabis destinations on earth, with people flocking to the city from all corners of the globe every spring. It's one of the only places on the planet where cannabis consumers of all backgrounds agree about the quality of the cannabis being made, with the same being true about the interesting places in which to consume it in a private setting. Nowhere else on earth can the same cannabis scene be found that exists in Barcelona, which is why people go there. It is arguably the #1 cannabis tourist destination on earth right now. Well, I know some people here in Canada wants to change that. Barcelona doesn't have a cannabis use problem. Rather, Barcelona has a cannabis regulation problem, and that problem in the passing year. Barcelona's unregulated cannabis market is enormous, and it is largely controlled by organized crime right now. That in turn creates public health outcome concerns with people consuming products that are not tested for contaminants, in addition to public safety concerns. The one thing I'm going to point out about that is the fact, are they seeing anybody dying from any of these products? That was a thing that I questioned here in Canada. And they kept saying about the illicit market being bad stuff because it's not being tested. No one's dying. The best thing that Barcelona policymakers can do is to work to transition cannabis clubs in Barcelona into a regulated system. Yet, that is not something that Barcelona politicians can do unilaterally. At one part, Barcelona had a regulatory problem. However, the Spanish Supreme Court halted the local program. They had a program in place, and the court shut it down. Ultimately, regulations need to be passed at the national level in Spain. Lawmakers need to recognize the reality of the situation. Hear, hear. The cannabis clubs in Spain are here to stay. I'd say so. And if that is better from a public health strategy standpoint to regulate the cannabis industry rather than leaving it to organized crime to continue to fill the void. And that's what it continues to do. People want these places. You wouldn't have 450 of them in the city if people didn't want them, because they wouldn't exist. Like as I said before, people are going to these places. That is showing their support. That was like in Toronto, here in Ontario. At one time Toronto had at least 10 vapor lounges at one time, and the province had somewhere around 20. I had a list of them going. And when the province outlawed smoking, they threw cannabis in there. And those businesses all had to close. It's a shame. But, they weren't like these clubs that are in Barcelona. People couldn't buy cannabis and stuff out them. But it was still a place where people could go. They were complaining about people smoking on the street. Well, stop that. Give them a place to go. Give patients a place to go when it's cold. They travel to Toronto. I have a friend who travels to Toronto. He's dealing with cancer. When he's there, he used to go to the vapor lounges, medicate. Now he's stuck going out in the crappy weather. You imagine going down there the other day when it was pouring rain and the snow and all that crap that was coming out, and having to medicate outside. No, they should allow a spot for people to go. There's no doubt about that. All right, on to the next story. This one comes to me from the Marijuana Moment. Headline says, Rhode Island bill would temporarily legalize psilocybin, home cultivation, and sharing. Wow, that's interesting. I know people will be interested in that here in Canada. Newly introduced bill in Rhode Island would effectively legalize psilocybin mushrooms in the state, removing penalties around possession, home cultivation, and sharing of psilocybin until mid-2026. I know friend Allison, she'd love to have that permission to be able to grow at home. The proposal from the rep Brandon Potter would not establish a commercial retail system around psilocybin, at least until after federal reform is enacted. Until then, it would exempt up to an ounce of psilocybin from the state's law against controlled substances, provided that it has been securely cultivated within a person's residence for personal use and is possessed by one person or shared by one person to another. That's nothing wrong with that. In an interview with Marijuana Moment, Potter said proposed change, which he described as a decriminalizing model, is designed to provide flexible access to people who benefit from psilocybin. Anything we do health-related needs to put patients front and center, he said. When you see all this overwhelming data that shows health benefits, the last thing I wanted to do was create a legalization model that would make it highly regulated and restrict access to people who actually needed it. Allowing non-commercial growing and sharing of psilocybin would create the framework to have it be the most accessible model for people to actually be able to get. In states where psilocybin-assisted therapy is legal, for example, Oregon, Potter said patients are sometimes paying $5,000 to $10,000 for treatment with psychedelics. Where do patients get that kind of money? We have a big storage of behavioral health care providers in Rhode Island, Potter said. A lot of them already are so squeezed by the private insurance system that they only take patients who are paying out of pocket. I don't want to exaggerate that issue. He also doesn't want to frame the reform to colleagues as a change aimed at making money. I don't want this to be an economically driven initiative. This is about a care option for people, not creating a new industry for the state at the expense of people's care. Beyond legalizing personal possession and use, the measure also includes contingent provisions that would be triggered by federal reform. If the federal government were to reschedule psilocybin, the State Department of Health shall establish rules and regulations pertaining to cultivation, distribution, and medical prescriptions. The wording of that provision creates some confusion, however. It suggests the Food and Drug Administration, which is mistakenly referred to in some cases as the Federal Drug Administration, has the authority to reschedule when in fact that jurisdiction is typically understood to lie with the Drug Enforcement Administration. FDA, for its part, is responsible for approving specific pharmaceutical drugs. In the case of the CBD drug Epilox, for instance, the FDA approved the pharmaceutical and DEA subsequently reschedule the cannabinoid itself. To use cannabis more broadly as an example, even if DEA decides to reschedule a substance, it could still be months or years before the FDA approves a new cannabis-derived drug for prescription by doctors. The proposed Rhode Island measure would also contingent on FDA's expansion of its access program and provide for a path to assessing psilocybin at the state level. Patients with serious or life-threatening mental or behavioral health disorders who are without access to effective mental or behavioral health medication, he says, may have access to psilocybin at locations in Rhode Island approved by the Rhode Island Department of Health. Asked about the wording, Potter emphasized that the primary goal of the bill is decriminalization, though he eventually also wants to allow doctors in the state to be able to recommend psilocybin to patients. Any lack of clarity on what would follow federal reform is separate from the bill's limited possession, cultivation, and sharing proposals, which would take effect on July 1st of this year. He's trying. The intentions of this provision, he said, at the reference to federal rescheduling, is to allow therapists to be able to not only prescribe a pharmaceutical per se, but to recommend a natural therapeutic to patients if they think this is helpful to them without having a legal liability. The section in question, he said, is designed to get the ball rolling at the state health department. Goes on to say, and he's clarifying, it's really about the delegating to the Department of Health, like, okay, once this is no longer a Schedule 1 drug, figure out what to do to allow the behavioral healthcare professionals to recommend this to patients where they see fit. And he's clarifying that, as I said. Changes that in the bill, 74.7, would be only temporary, scheduled to sunset on July 1st, 2026. Before then, the Rhode Island Attorney General would need to issue a report to the House Speaker and Senate President, including the number of violations issued for possession, cultivation, or distribution of psilocybin. The State Department of Health would need to file a report. Meanwhile, relating to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's scheduling of psilocybin permitted use for the treatment of mental and behavioral health disorders. Potter explains, anytime we introduce anything that might have some kind of stigma to it or could be controversial in a certain segment of people who are not familiar with it, it causes some hesitation and concern. As I worked through this with legislative leaders and some of my colleagues, I was trying to address those concerns. There was a desire to track what the criminal justice implication was and revisit in a couple of years. And that's why they're keeping track of some of these notations or whatever they mentioned over the decriminalization. The bill's co-sponsors include House Judiciary Committee Chair Rep. Robert Craven and 8 other lawmakers. Other than specific dates mentioned, are virtually identical to those in the lawmakers' proposal from last year. H5923, the full Rhode Island House Representative, approved that legislation on a 54-11 vote last year, but it did not progress to the Senate. When the House passed last year's measure, Potter called it a positive step towards addressing mental health care and modern evidence-based policy and research. As for this year's bill, the lawmaker said he's hopeful the measure will make it to the Senate again and receive a hearing there. After last year's House vote on Potter's bill, he said, I had a lot of people reach out to me expressing great appreciation for passing the bill and sharing their personal stories with me about their use of psilocybin and how helpful it was for them. I'm hopeful that with a Senate committee hearing this year, they'll hear some of those voices and understand that there's a number of people in Rhode Island that have already benefited from this treatment, and in doing so, they've broken the law. You know, it's like here in Canada when with medical cannabis. At one time, the only way you're allowed to consume it was to smoke it. And everybody was consuming it in a different way, whether they were making an oil or making even butter to make an edible or a topical or stuff like that. It was illegal for them to do that until patients, once again, went before the courts to make changes. You know, like I say, patients have always had to do the fight before the courts to make changes to the program here in Canada. It's unfortunate, but it happens. All right, on to my last story of the day. And this one, once again, comes to me from the international cannabis business. A few stories from their place. Medical cannabis use associated with a few severe adverse events. All right, let's see what they were. Canada first legalized cannabis for medical use in 1999. Okay, so it's been 24 years and only one store. And then for adult use in 2018. Since that time, numerous suffering patients have benefited from Canada's modernized cannabis policies and increased safe access that reform has created. Meanwhile, many other nations still prohibit cannabis for medical use to some degree, although several of those nations are considering reforming their policies to permit such use. Opponents in these countries try hard to portray medical cannabis as being harmful. However, what does that science say? Researchers in Canada recently conducted an analysis in which they examined medical cannabis use impact on patients who consume it. And here's more of that report. They say here that a few patients authorized to consume medical cannabis products report experiencing serious side effects, according to the data published in the journal Drug Safety. McGill University researchers analyzed data from a cohort of nearly 3,000 authorized Canadian medical cannabis patients. Data regarding adverse events was collected by enrollees attending physicians over a period of several years. A total of 108 patients, so about 4% of the cohort, reported experiencing marijuana-related adverse effects. The most frequently reported side effect was dizziness, soreness, headache, nausea, and vomiting. The one word I hadn't even heard of the one word before. Patients with mental health disorders were no more likely than others to report side effects from cannabis treatment. The latter finding is consistent with data from the 2022 study, which found that authorized Canadian patients were at low risk for psychiatric hospitalization resulting from their medical use of cannabis. The study's authors concluded this is the first comprehensive population-level prospective study to contribute evidence that medical cannabis is safe for a wide variety of symptoms. No new safety concerns were identified relative to the published literature, although notable differences in adverse effects profile between modes of administration and cannabinoid content ratios should be considered by health professionals. So there you go. You know, patients no, bad side effects. Very few. 100 patients have had some side effects there out of the thousands that they reviewed and looked at. So, it's as we've been saying all these years. It's not causing mental health issues. It's benefiting people. It's not making people worse, making people sicker. Just making people better is what it's doing. Giving them better quality of life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Never nothing wrong with that. All right, folks, there we go. I got through all by myself. Other than that, we'll see you again on Monday. I'll be back Monday morning with Rev Kelly to do news then. Other than that, that's a report for today from the Legacy420.com news desk, and for our buds at Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City Hydroponics.ca, and Legacy420.com. In closing, we'd like to say thank you for watching and listening, and don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop.
Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.